On November 21st, 2023, Milan Lucic, the NHL player from the Boston Bruins, was arraigned for an alleged assault and battery on his wife, Brittany Lucic. So before we get into everything that went on, let's just let the prosecutor speak for himself. He's going to give, the judge asks him for a brief resuscitation of the facts. So let's hear his version of the resuscitation of the facts. Take a look.
Judge, the Commonwealth is just seeking personal recognizance. We're going to ask for a pretrial date. I've spoken to my brother about some dates that work for both parties. The Commonwealth has filed a motion, as well as completing a 276-56A form. At this time, Judge, if the court wants to hear a recitation of the facts, I'm happy to provide it.
Why don't you give a brief recitation of the facts?
Sure, Judge. Judge, the facts in this case allege that approximately 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, November 18th of this year, officers did respond to a radio call for an assault and battery at 50 Battery Street here in Boston. Operations relayed to the responding officers that the reporting party, the victim in this case, had called and stated that the defendant attempted to choke her. It was also relayed that this victim left the apartment, was located by officers in the lobby of the building, while the defendant was located inside of the apartment itself. Upon arrival, officers met with the victim inside of the lobby. This victim did state her name. She further stated the defendant's name, and at that time she stated that during the evening, the defendant could not locate his cell phone. After returning to the apartment from a night out, she further stated the defendant began yelling at her, demanding his phone back, and believing that she had hid the defendant's phone. The victim further stated she did not have his cell phone, did not know where it was located, and at that time she stated that she attempted to walk away from the situation, and at which time she was grabbed by her hair and pulled backwards. Furthermore, this individual stated that during this process, the defendant stated to her that she was not going anywhere. At that time, officers did observe redness on the victim's chest area. They did ask her if the defendant attempted to strangle her during the incident. She responded in the negative, Judge, saying that he did not. She also declined to be seen by EMS, and at that time, she also stated the defendant was consuming alcohol during the evening. Officers notified their patrol supervisor. Response was initiated. Photographs were taken of the apparent injuries. At that time, she was also provided with a copy of her victim's rights under 209A. At that time, officers remained with the victim while additional officers who responded went to speak with the defendant. And prior to doing so, a check was done for any orders or warrants. There were none. Furthermore, officers proceeded to the apartment. They made contact with the defendant. He appeared intoxicated when he answered the door. He stated to officers that nothing had happened, and he did not attempt to provide any explanation at that time. He was informed of the allegations made against him, that he would be taken into custody. The defendant was cooperative, indicated that he understood, and at that time he was escorted upstairs to retrieve his belongings. While they were up in the apartment, they observed a broken lamp on one of the nightstands and what appeared to be a small amount of broken glass on the floor. Those are essentially the facts of the case, Your Honor. Based on the defendant's board of probation record, the facts of the case, as well as all other circumstances, we are asking for personal recognizance. We're asking the court to consider bail conditions to be a no-abuse order and for the defendant to refrain from consuming alcohol during the pendency of the case.
Okay, so let's break each thing down one by one. So what's personal recognizance? That's what he's asking for the bond. Well, sometimes a bond is only, it has to be, you have to pay certain money to get out on bond. But in this situation, it's called personal recognizance, which is basically just a written promise that the defendant will appear at the next hearing. So you're just basically telling the court, trust me, take my word for it. I'm not going to be escaping the country. I'm not going to, I'm not going to be a threat to anybody. I'm just going to show up at the next hearing. Everything's going to be fine. So in this type of case where there's no extensive criminal history or anything like that, so they're allowing Milan out on a personal recognizance bond. So that is the first step. The next step is that there was a form that the prosecutor very quickly mentioned, which was what he called 276-56A. That was a form that had to be filled out. What exactly is that form? Well, that form is taken from the statute. The statute actually is what he's referencing, Chapter 276, Section 56A, which reads the following. Before a judge of the Superior Court, District Court, or Boston Municipal Court releases, discharges, or admits to bail any person arrested and charged with a crime against the person or property of another. So here, is exactly this situation where there is a person that is being charged, Milan is being charged with a crime against another person. The judicial officer shall inquire of the Commonwealth, in this case, which is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is the same thing as saying the state, the prosecutor, as to whether abuse, as defined in Section 1 of Chapter 209A, which is just a list of what can be considered abuse, is alleged to have occurred immediately prior to or in conjunction with the crime for which the person was arrested and charged. So this is a person that's arrested and charged with assault and battery. Were there any similar abuses that the person that may have occurred, that this person maybe has done immediately prior or in conjunction with this crime? And they have to write this written statement. The Commonwealth shall file a preliminary written statement if it is alleged that abuse has so occurred. So if it's alleged that other abuse has occurred immediately prior or in conjunction with the abuse that he's being charged for, so then the Commonwealth, the state, the prosecutor has to write a preliminary written statement. This is the form that he is referring to. This preliminary written statement is not to be considered a criminal record information or public records, and shall not be open for public inspection, meaning the public is not going to be able to access these preliminary written statements. So this is the statement that the prosecutor has to fill out and give to the judge, which he said he has done that, and that's what he meant when he referred to 27656A. That form was referring to that form that has to be filled out. So let's talk about some of the facts of this case, and we'll get into the legal arguments that can be made, some of the questions, some of the analysis that a lawyer would make when looking at this case, at least from my perspective. So we have on Saturday, 1 a.m., November 18th, 2023, that is when Brittany's apparently, now again, her name was not used by the prosecution in this case, but that's the understanding here. The understanding here is that Brittany was the victim here. Brittany is, of course, Milan's wife. So she called the cops, and she said that the defendant, Milan, attempted to choke her. And that's apparently what was said on that phone call, that initial phone call that she made with the police station. So the police station responded, the officers responded, and when they got to the apartment, she was in the lobby. So she already left the apartment, and she was in the lobby. Now, what the fight seemed to have been about was that Milan misplaced his phone. He didn't know where his phone was. And he thought that Brittany, took his phone and hid it from him. Maybe as a joke or maybe for some other reason. He decided that she took his phone and hid it. Now so he confronted her at the end of the night. This is 1 a.m. in the middle of the night. And they must have just come back from some sort of party or some sort of outing. And he's like, "Where's my phone?" And she said, "I don't know where it is." And she attempted to walk away. Now, when she attempted to walk away, he grabbed onto her hair. This is what she's telling the officers who responded. He grabbed onto her hair, and Milan said, "You are not going anywhere." So he grabbed her hair, said, "You ain't going nowhere. You're not going anywhere." Now, that seems to be the extent of the conversation that she had with the police officers that responded to her complaint. Now, again, it could be there's more in there, but we don't hear of anything. This is just what the prosecutor is saying, the recitation of the facts. So that's all we've heard. And obviously, it's going to be a lot of question marks here because, number one, initially she said that he was choking her. And then she says to the officers that he did not attempt to strangle her. The officers asked her at the time, "Did he attempt to strangle you?" And she said no. So what happened from the time that she made the phone call to the time that the officers responded? Did her memory get any better? Did she remember the events better? What exactly happened there? Or is there a difference between what she says, strangle and choke? Maybe there's a difference there. But these are all questions that she could be asked if this ever goes anywhere. She can be asked these questions. What happened? Was it a strangle? Was it a choke? First you said it was a choke, then you said that he didn't strangle you. That's a question. Now the officers also observed some redness on her chest area. And she also said that Milan consumed alcohol that evening. So what is the redness of the chest? Where is that redness coming from? Now, according to her story, if he pulled on her hair and that was the extent of the story, well, how did that redness get to her chest? It doesn't sound like she said anything about him touching her chest. So what happened there? That's a big question mark also. Now, again, there could be some details that the prosecutor's not delving into that maybe she did say, and he's just leaving them out for some reason. But from what we are able to observe and hear in this hearing, where that should be a question in our minds: where did the redness from her chest come? Now, she also declined EMS. They offered her, "Do you need do you need EMS? Do you need to go to the hospital? And she declined and says, no, I'm okay. So we're not talking about serious injuries, apparently. Now, photos were taken of whatever injuries she did claim that she had. And also, here's another question. It doesn't seem that there's any redness around her neck, or at least the officers didn't mention it, or the prosecutor didn't mention it. There's no redness around her neck. So what's going on? If there was a choke, maybe there should be some redness around the cheek. Maybe not. Okay, but that's a question. That's an area that could be explored further if this is to actually go anywhere. Now, she was also given rights, a form which tells her rights under 209A, which is what the prosecutor said. 209A, again, is also referring to a statute where it's a form which essentially tells the victim what she can do in the case that she feels that she's being abused. She can she can file a complaint, she can get a temporary restraining order, she is able to protect her children. She's allowed to do certain things under that statute if she feels that this abuse can continue. She was advised of her rights, what she's allowed to do to take further action with this abuse. Now, that was the officers responding to her. Then she's out of the apartment, she's in the lobby. The officers go up to his apartment and the officers asked him what's going on. Now, the officers did observe that he was intoxicated at the time. He appeared to be intoxicated, and the officers asked him what happened. He said, oh, nothing happened at all. So the officers tell him, well, I understand that that's your side of the story, but there's a complaining witness downstairs, your wife, who said that there's a different story, and she's complaining that you actually assaulted her and you committed a battery on her, so we are going to be taking you into custody. He complied. He didn't fight it. He didn't argue with them. He complied. He went upstairs to get his belongings. Now, the officers accompanied him to get his belongings, and they observed a broken lamp on the nightstand and broken glass on the floor. So where did that come from? There doesn't seem to be that there's a struggle here. All we heard so far was that he grabbed her here and pulled her and yanked her and said, you're not going anywhere. From her story, at least the way the prosecutor said these facts over, it didn't seem like there was any struggle or any grabbing of a lamp, throwing it down, or any glass being broken on the floor. How did that happen? How did that occur? It's possible, this is just theory, speculation, it's possible that maybe somebody was upset afterwards, after this happened, this fight happened, and maybe she went in there and broke the lamp, and maybe he went in there and broke the lamp. We don't know. These are just another question marks about what exactly is the full story here. So at the end of the day, the prosecutor again he just asks for personal recognizance for that type of bond. He also asks that there be a non-abuse order. A non-abuse order is just an order that the defendant here, Milan, should not be able to abuse his wife, which he's not allowed to do anyway. But they have this in an order, so that he's not allowed to abuse her. Number two also, and number three is that she is to refrain from consuming alcohol. He's not allowed to have any alcohol until this case is over. So no drinking at all. Now the defense filed a motion to get an unredacted copy of the police report, which sometimes that's important because sometimes you get the police report and they redact certain information, and as the defense attorney, you want a fully unredacted copy of the police report. So he filed that motion. The prosecution did not object to that, so therefore the judge granted that the defense will be able to get an unredacted copy of the police report. Now he files a plea. He pleads not guilty in this case, so that was part of the arraignment. And now they set the pretrial for January 19th, 2024, where he can appear remotely. So we're not going to have another physical appearance by Milan Lucic. He's going to appear via Zoom onto the pretrial January 19th, 2024. Now, who is Milan Lucic? Well, he's a 35-year-old NHL player. He's been in the NHL for a long time, and he's been married to Brittany for 11 years. So there's another question right away that should jump out to you. They've been married for 11 years. It doesn't seem that there's been a pattern of abuse, or at least reported abuse. Now, it could be, of course, there could be some abuse. People live under abusive conditions and do not report it. That is possible. But we haven't heard anything in the past about other abuse that he's inflicted on Brittany, or that Brittany complained about, or that she went out and got temporary restraining orders. At least I didn't find it. I didn't do an extensive research. If you happen to know, and you're watching this, you happen to know that there were some other complaints that were filed by Brittany over the past 11 years, or there were other restraining orders, please let me know in the comments. Don't bite my head off. Just let me know. But it doesn't seem, at least that way, that there's been an extensive pattern of abuse in this case. Now, again, It could be that there was and it just wasn't reported, but at least reported abuse, it doesn't seem like that was going on. So what happened after 11 years? Is their marriage in some sort of disarray? Are they having some problems with their marriage? They have 3 children also. There's 3 kids in that marriage. So it seems to be a very committed and long-term relationship here, and they have children from the relationship. It seems like, that things were going well. Again, we don't know what happens behind closed doors. Things can happen all the time, but it's just another question mark about this case, that this is not someone that they've been dating for a few months or even married for a few years. This is 11 years, and this seems to be the first time that we're hearing about these type of allegations. And again, if you did hear about other allegations, or if there were other allegations, please let me know in the comments so I can take a look at them. But that's another question. Another question is, was she drinking at the time? Was she intoxicated? Maybe her memory wasn't so good about the events that happened that night. And there's been no mention about that. The police officers didn't seem to say that she appeared intoxicated or not. So you would assume that she was not drinking that night. But that's another avenue to explore. Did she have any drinks that night? Did she drink at all? And what was going on there? Also, another thing, he said that you're not going anywhere. He grabbed her hair and said, "You're not going anywhere." Well, somehow she ended up in the lobby. So she apparently did get away from him. What happened then after he said that? Did he say it again? Did he threaten her? Did he try to stop her from leaving? That also is an area that could be explored. So the Boston Bruins announced that he would be taking an indefinite leave of absence, I guess, until this is all sorted out, to see what exactly happens. Now, what is Milan really facing in terms of a penalty in this situation? So an assault and battery, this is taken from the statute in Massachusetts. The assault and battery, this is chapter 265, section 13A. You can take a look. And this essentially says the following. Whoever commits an assault or an assault and battery upon another shall be punished by imprisonment for not more than 2.5 years. So you cannot be in prison for longer than 2.5 years in a house of correction, or by a fine of not more than $1,000. So you have a fine either up to $1,000 or prison of 2.5 years. Obviously, you would want the fine instead of the years in prison. Now, there is an aggravating part about in this statute, which is that if, let's say, the assault and battery committed results in serious bodily injury, which again does not seem to be the case here. She didn't need EMS, she didn't go to the hospital, it didn't seem that she went to the doctors afterwards. So it does not seem to be that there was a serious bodily injury here. But if there would be a serious bodily injury, then everything is much more serious. It's you can get up to $5,000 fine. There can be up to 5 years in prison. So much more of a serious offense. In this case, it's not. So what's realistically going to happen? If I had to guess what's going to happen in this case, he's probably going to show up to the hearing, the pretrial hearing on, was it January 19th, 2024, and they're probably going to work out some sort of plea deal. And he's going to have some sort of plea deal, probably some sort of slap on the wrist, and then he's not going to fight this. He's not going to try to take this to trial or anything. That's what I would probably guess what would happen. And the prosecution probably also doesn't want to try. It seems like there's a lot of question marks about exactly what happened here. They've been married for 11 years, like we said. This is husband and wife. Could be that they can reconcile afterwards and everything, they can make up, and then she doesn't want to continue with this suit. We don't know. So, but if I had to guess, I would guess that there's going to be some sort of plea deal entered into on January 19th, and that's going to be the end of it. But we don't know for sure, all speculation, but that's some of my educated guesses. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, like the video so we can continue growing. That's it for today. See you next time.